This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hi guys, I'm here with a video showing you how I made the wings for my Witch Mercy cosplay. These wings are designed to be taken apart so that they can fit in my fairly small suitcase. If you want to get the patterns for these wings or any of her other costume pieces, they're all available on my store Envy. To start off, I'm cutting this 1/4-inch PVC pipe down to various sizes. So this is going to be used to create the harness for the back, which is this U-shaped piece, and you'll need to measure your back to figure out the exact measurements that will fit you. And then it's also going to be used for the base of the wings, like the black section. I will insert photos so you can see what I'm talking about. Once I have all the pieces cut out, I go ahead and attach the pieces for the harness together using these connectors. All of this can be found at your local hardware store. To start off, I had made it too big, that U-shaped piece, so I went ahead and cut it down a little bit more off camera. It's better to make it longer than shorter because you can always make it shorter, but once you cut it, it's cut. So next I'm transferring everything onto foam. I'm taking the entire outline of these blades of the wings, that's what we'll call them because they kind of look like it, but they're not. Anyways, I'm taking the entire outline of that pattern and transferring it onto 2mm foam. Then I'm cutting out the sections that you can see me cutting out here, that will be the orange pieces, and taking what's left and transferring that onto 4mm foam. I'm only making one, or cutting out one pattern for each blade on the 2mm foam, but when I'm doing the 4mm foam piece, I need to make two for each blade, since there's a front and a back then, and the thin foam is going to be slapped right in the middle, so you only need one layer of that. But you'll see more of that later, or understand better what I'm talking about when we glue the pieces together. Also, ignore that bowl of water over there. That is from me washing off paintbrushes, and I also used it to help mold clay for the broomstick handle, which will be a future video. I numbered each blade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so at the end of cutting everything out, I ended up with 4mm foam pieces of each blade and 2mm foam pieces of each blade. Before gluing everything together, I'm going ahead and beveling this middle section that I won't be able to easily get to once it's glued together, because there will be that part that's going to be orange in the future there. You're going to want to make sure you do this on opposite sides to the pairs that match up together, since they will be sandwiched in between, and you don't want to have the beveled edges facing the same way, because then you just end up with this weird edge on one. Next, I'm laying the 4mm foam pieces onto the 2mm foam pieces and drawing an outline so I know where to apply my glue. I'm using contact cement for this entire build. I super love it. It's so easy to work with. So I'm just slapping that on to each piece that's going to need to adhere to another piece. There's instructions on how to use it on the bottle. Contact cement needs to be left to set for like a few minutes. I found it says 15 minutes, but usually it only needed to set for 3 for me. So once it's set for a little bit, I go ahead and sandwich all the pieces together, and I will work on applying glue to other pieces while I'm waiting for one to dry. I go ahead and clean up the edges with a Dremel to make sure everything's even and smoothed out. Here here you can better see how we sandwich the pieces together. So the 2mm foam was sandwiched in between the 4mm foam pieces, which is why it was important to make sure when you were beveling the centers, it was on opposite sides. Next, I'm cutting out the pieces for the base of the wings, or like the part that holds the rest of the wings or wing blades or whatever, in 6mm EVA foam. So all of these pieces are to create the little box that comes from her back, and like that the wings, like the entire set of wings, come out of. There's 2 little boxes that attach to her back. I'll try to insert a picture if I can find one, but that's what I'm creating here. I'm just adding on the second layer, dremeling that down, and then gluing all the pieces together to create the box shape. And I just made this to fit around the PVC pipe. Like once it's all put together, that opening is just big enough to fit around not just the PVC pipe itself, but the little connector piece. Then I go back to working on the black piece from earlier that like holds all the little blades. That's what we're going to call them, blades. And I'm creating these grooves in the underside section so that I can glue those shut and create this sharp bend and like give it the sharp bend. I've used it in other builds before. It's a really common technique. Just make sure you don't cut through the foam completely, because that would suck. These next clips will be a teensy bit scattered, but I'm just working on all of the pieces that holds like the rest of the wings or the blades. So here I'm creating the second layer for the main base of the wings out of 2mm EVA foam, and I'm also attaching this little like fiery piece for the part that holds the largest end wing out of 2mm foam and gluing that in place. I'm also measuring how long the pieces are because I need to create the top section of that piece, and it needs to fit around the PVC pipe. And to create this, I'm just cutting out a rectangular shape. That's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It just needs to be the same length as the main holder piece so that we could kind of put a cap on it and you don't see the PVC pipe in the middle. This gives you a better idea of what I was talking about. Here I'm gluing all these pieces together. I'm gluing this little, again, like cap section onto these squares so that you don't really see what's going inside. Like the PVC pipe is a bit more hidden. And then I'm gluing the PVC pipe to the main holder piece, and it's just going to go right in the middle there, and it will be hidden as well. To give it a little bit extra support, I cut out another rectangular strip the same length as the main holder piece, and I'm just gluing that in place and to the PVC pipe. I'm basically just boxing in this PVC pipe to make sure that it kind of stays hidden because I didn't really want it to show at any point, or show as little as possible. And then we glue on the other side of the main holder piece, because that's what I've determined this piece will be called. Once all of that is glued together, I go ahead and add that top layer that I mentioned earlier that we made out of the 2mm foam, and I'm just gluing that directly onto this piece, as you can see here.
1, 3, 4.
So I debated making these two separate pieces and just having them all come apart, but in the end I decided it would just barely fit in my suitcase, and it did just barely fit. So I just glued this part directly on to the main wing. This part kind of like is the end of the wing holder, but it also holds the biggest wing blade. Okay, here. Now I can finally talk about how I made everything attach, because this is as big as all the pieces we're going to get. They weren't going to be glued onto each other any farther than this. So I took a Dremel and I just drilled out this circle, and the Dremel happened to be the perfect size of the magnets I used. The magnets I used, and I'm just going to repeat the title of the listing, were Rare Earth N48 magnets. So while I was waiting for glue to dry, I just sewed together this harness that attaches to the U shape that we built earlier, and basically it's literally just backpack straps, and then one strap goes across, like my underbust and my torso, and that's all that is to it. Anyways, back to the magnets. So I use these magnets specifically because they're supposed to be really, really strong, and they're built for stuff like this, and they're very, very difficult to get apart. So when gluing these, I had to add a cover of thin foam, 2mm foam, to go on top of at least one of the magnets. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to pull it apart, or I would have trouble pulling it apart because I couldn't just slide it due to like how deep some of the grooves ended up being. And to get them apart, you have to slide them unless there's something in between them. So I added basically what's a spacer. And no, do not use fridge magnets. Fridge magnets are not strong enough. They can't carry this kind of weight. They will fall apart. They probably won't even stick. So when attaching magnets to the main wing, I added one on the top part that you just saw me working on, and then one on the side, and that was strong enough to hold the big blade wing. For the rest of them, I added two on each. One of them on this first wing, on number 4, as you can see here, has two that attaches directly to the wing holder. But now the wings start to overlap, so the next one is going to have one that attaches to one end of number 4, and one that attaches to the wing holder. And then number 2 has one magnet that attaches to number 3, and one to the wing holder, and so on. You'll get a better idea in a few seconds here. As I go along, I mark where I need the magnets to go, and I thought I would need to add magnets to the back of the wings where, like, the blades where the wings attach to one another, but the magnets are strong enough that I only need to put one right in the middle of those sandwich pieces, and it goes through both sides of the foam fairly easily. Towards the end there, though, I did need to attach little tiny nubs to the top pieces because they were just a little bit short, and attach magnets to those just due to the way I needed them to sit and where the magnets had to line up. But you might not need to do this. So once all of the magnets were in place, I could move on to priming and painting. I'm priming all of the wings, all of the pieces with a couple layers of wood glue, and then I will be going through and adding Bondo's glazing and spot putty around the edges. Here's where I'm adding the Bondo's glazing and spot putty. I'm adding that anywheres that has seam lines, which are usually just around all of the edges, letting that dry and then sanding that down so that everything's smooth. And then I'll do about, I think it was another 2 or 3 coats of wood glue. So the wing blade that I labeled wing blade number 1, or the smallest one, has a little lightning bolt piece to the side, and I didn't see that earlier. So I'm going ahead and cutting that out of 4mm foam. No, this was 4mm foam. Yeah. Okay, sorry, doubting myself there. Anyways, I cut that out of 4mm foam, and then I glued that on, and I had already primed everything, so I had to go in and prime these pieces again as well. I mostly just focused on priming the piece that I just attached, but hopefully you guys won't skip this step and end up having to add it on later, because my pattern includes it and says this attaches to this piece. Yeah. Anyways, here's me moving on to painting. And I'm using acrylic paint to paint the entire thing. So these pieces right here, the part of the 2mm foam that's been sticking out for a while here, I'm painting orange. And it took a lot of coats to get it opaque and not so transparent looking. I think there's about 7 layers of orange paint on there. Once the orange paint was opaque and dried, I go ahead and brush on some yellow paint to create this ombre effect. So how I exactly do it is I mix a bit of yellow and orange to start with and brush that on and blend it up to the top, adding more orange if it needs to be blended a bit better. And then I'll go in and add another layer, but this time with a little bit more yellow, and blend that slightly farther down than the first layer, and then again with I think just at this point it was just pure yellow, and leave that kind of just towards the bottom and blend that out. And anytime I needed it to be blended better, I just mixed in a little bit more orange or dabbed my brush in a bit more orange and kind of like just brushed that on lightly.
One, three, four. One, four.
And then to almost finish it off, I just had to paint all of the other pieces black, or all of the other parts. I guess it's still the same piece, but everything else on her wings is just pure black. So I'm taking black acrylic paint and painting everything black, and I think for the black it only took about 2 layers of paint. The little cubes from earlier are the only thing that's a different color other than orange and black, and those are brown. And this took quite a few layers as well because the brown was pretty transparent in color. After this though, I just sprayed everything with a glossy coat of spray paint to seal all of the acrylic paint in place, and I was done. The wings are finished. So hopefully you guys found this helpful, find my patterns helpful. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day. I will be back with more videos on how I made the rest of my Witch Mercy costume. So subscribe and check that out. Bye!